This is not science.
Mom? Hi, Mom.
Hi, Duncan.
Would you be in my vidcast?
Episode 8 of A Midnight Gospel is first and foremost Duncan Trussell's warm and loving conversation with his mom Deneen Fending. She has stage 4 cancer and dies 3 months later. It's a conversation about birth, life, death, and everything in between and beyond. The conversation is highly philosophical, and philosophy is sometimes annoying because it's hard to apply to our daily experiences. I think a good philosophy is like a clean sheet of linen. It's fragrant, you can unfold it, spread it, and sleep on it. It will support you and make you rest easy. Philosophy should be the same. It should flow as you read it, but it should not burden you, and you should be able to unfold it and spread it over daily existence to make living simpler and more meaningful. Midnight Gospel's Mouth of Silver has all the ingredients of such philosophy, but it's compacted and doesn't unfold easily. I also believe that this philosophy can change people's lives for the better and that we deserve a better change. So I can't resist but try to unfold some of the ideas. In this endeavor, the biggest challenge is to stay true to Duncan's mom's thoughts and not make them boringly obvious.
I would tell them to cry when they need to cry and to turn toward this thing that's called death. Turn toward it. And even if you're afraid to turn toward it, turn toward it. It won't hurt you. And see what it has to teach you. It's a tremendous teacher, free of charge.
I don't think it'd sell a lot of goddamn tickets if it was trying to.
A lot of us will agree with Duncan's feelings about turning towards death. It's not a pleasant pastime, and generally we don't think about it unless someone dies or life becomes insufferable. And what's the point? At best, it will make you depressed. But Mom speaks about this experience as something very positive. She also implies that we're looking somewhere else when she says turn towards it. So what are we turned towards our whole life? The main idea is quite simple, but unpacking it in a way that is clear and down to earth is not. Let's start with what is known for sure. We are born, we live, we die. Also, there is no way of reversing, since time, as far as we know, flows in one direction only. So birth, existence, and the end of it all is the flow of life in a specific direction. One way of thinking about that direction is towards death. When we're not looking in that direction, we're not following the flow. But also, you could say that we're not watching where we're going. That is the key. When we're looking away from death, we're not watching the road and accidents happen. Seems quite obvious. Wherever I'm driving a car or taking a loan or making important decisions, if I don't watch where I'm going, I get hurt. So turning towards death is less about dying and more about realization that by changing the direction of where you're facing, you will not see death, but the path ahead of you, and then you will stumble and fall less. So you're looking ahead, you can see the road, but also you're traveling with a flow. So whatever your aspirations are, you get there faster because you're riding the wave. And surfing is so much more pleasant than fighting against the flow.
But I do think that we suffer more if we resist that flow of the river.
Right.
It's always flowing. That if we try to get over there to the side so that we can get on the bank and be exempt from the flow, that's where we begin to suffer more and more.
Life is generally good for humans, however, it has its limitations. It's boring when we have nothing to do, and it can become very painful at times. Some of us are less fortunate than others, and when we don't have control over our lives, we get hurt and get dragged through the dirt and sleet. We grow cold and miserable and lose hope. Then we try to wash away bad memories with alcohol or fall into oblivion using some other way. Sometimes we are just born on the wrong side of the fence. Then we become hungry, angry and spiteful. We get hurt by looking backward at our younger, better days and mourning the time that is lost forever. Or we may spend time doubting and judging ourselves, regretting mistakes, over-investing in our appearances. These are the obvious examples of backward looking and suffering that Mom is talking about, but there are cases that are not that evident. Some of us are actually quite capable of changing our own lives and lives of many others. Influential people cannot stop the flow of life, but they can play with it, shape it and twist it. You know those of us who have this power. They are the Einsteins, the Musks, the Dalai Lamas, but also the Hitlers and the Harvey Weinsteins of this world. If it so happens that this influential person is focused on the satisfaction of their own needs, all their energy is spent trying to create their own cult. They will try to build something big, like a dam or a colossal pyramid, and will tell everyone they meet that the pyramid is the way to happiness, the way to fulfillment of your greatest dreams. Power begets power, and over time the empire becomes so big that even if someone wants to pass peacefully without getting involved in the game, measures will be taken against them because in this system they are the danger to themselves or the society. Many people will play the game and climb the pyramid to learn that there is no happiness and no space for everyone at the top. After falling, they will just try to climb back up. Eventually, even the person who began the game of a pyramid will fall prey to it. All their energy will be spent on building fake happiness and hurting themselves and millions of other people in the process. Has our culture become this clan of worship set in motion ages ago? And do we stay true to the path because there's no other way?
You subscribe to the idea that the formative years create the beginning of a pattern that goes throughout your life.
Yes. I would say that the first 5 years of our lives shapes the personality structure in such a way that any kind of spiritual work that you're going to do later is going to involve looking back at the patterns that were set down in your family of origin. Anything that you were reinforced for in a positive way, you're going to lock in as the way a person should be.
This trend of locking in what a person should be is even stronger when we take the whole culture into consideration. Even if your mother and father taught you the best way to live, the surest way to look forward, you will still inherit some traits from your culture because you need to live in it and blend in. Or if you want to stand out, you have to do it in a way that is perceived as positive. Otherwise, you will be seen as a weirdo, a crazy person, a criminal, or a terrorist. These are the labels that are given to you when you do not fit in. So remember when I asked if my living is forward-looking if I don't suffer? Well, maybe if it's not at the expense of others. And if we ask this question about our culture, we know that our lifestyle causes suffering all over the world. At least 571 species have gone extinct since the 1750s, while many more are almost at the point of extinction. Humanity is the worst tyrant that nature ever had. We fuel our economy by burning bodies of dead dinosaurs. We block rivers, affecting the natural flow of ocean currents, and as a result, changing the climate. And of course, we may subscribe to humanism, which can be summarized as "Me be man, me be smart, me want nom nom, me take." But that isn't such an intelligent way to live, is it? Also, if we think this is limited to nature, we know it ain't true either. We may not hunt and eat our fellow people, but we gladly herd them into financial and legal slaughterhouses. For the rest of us, we turn a blind eye to all of that by focusing on getting more money and more stuff. What's more frightening is that generation after generation, this lifestyle is reinforced in a positive way. That is the model that we teach our children as the good life. However, just because you inherited a gun doesn't mean you must start shooting people.
You start with where you are, but if you don't go back and see what's real and what's not real, then you're missing your way into reality, which is what spirituality is all about as far as I'm concerned.
When we embrace a way of living that encourages consumption as entertainment and source of happiness, we subscribe to the exploitation of all the life on Earth. Not everything in our culture is bad. We don't need to tear down economies and dig dirt for living. But what is progress and what progress is productive needs to be reassessed. Our planet has too many consumers and too few explorers. One of them is Elon Musk, who invests his energy and capital into exploration. But if we count all the explorers, innovators and scientists, they constitute 0.0009% of the whole population. It means that there are 7.5 billion people who mostly consume without contributing back. This is a scary number and sounds like a recipe for a great disaster. The culture of more is better must be replaced by less is more. This is the principle that Finland subscribes to. One of their great achievements is its educational system. Their children are among the top of all the countries, while they have fewest lessons, least homework, and no official exams or tests until graduation. Having more stuff must stop being measure of a person's status. Contributing most while consuming the least must inspire the greatest admiration. IKEA's founder, Ingvar Kamprad, was an example of a man who followed a similar principle. Despite being a billionaire, he drove an old 1993 Volvo, used public transportation when car would break, flew only economy class, wore simple, cheap clothes, and lived in a house that was humble and in no way revealed his fortune. I know this goes against how we live right now. However, we would be able to keep a lot of the good things that we like doing today, and we would lose a lot of things that don't have a point, that are artificially created and exist for the sake of existing. We would be bored and would want to come back to the way things were before, but also we would find a lot of time on our hands. And having time lets us ask questions, explore and evolve. Greatest inventions were made by looking differently at things that we take for granted. Newton and Einstein looked at ordinary things and asked questions that nobody asked before, which gave a completely different groundbreaking perspective. Imagine if all people on Earth contributed some of their newly found time to exploration.
Yes.
And even as you are in that state of presence, if you are in it even for a minute, if you can stay in it for a minute, you will begin to sense the flow.
Right.
Of energy. You will sense that there is a river, because a lot of people on the side of the river don't even realize there's a river.
Right.
So
What's the river?
So think about this. Life and all matter flow in one direction. Currents don't just appear out of nowhere and magically disappear. And if there is a flow, it means there is a current and maybe a river. Perhaps this short time we call life is just a part of a greater flow. If there is that river that we speak of, maybe there is some evidence of it. If you look at a plant growing in a stream, you will notice that water seems calm where nothing resists the flow, but it comes alive elsewhere. The small obstacle creates waves that make the stream visible, and also the flow of water is slower near the stem. This reminds of Einstein's discovery that time runs slower through dense matter, such as a planet. The flow is slower on Earth than it is in space, and much slower around a black hole. Also, the ripples and waves in the river resemble the magnetic fields and gravitational waves created by matter. It's almost as if life is the waves of time made visible by the obstacles in the stream. And maybe even time is not what we think it is. If we look at a leaf without knowing about the wind, we might think that the leaf is alive because it moves and dances for no apparent reason. If there is a river but we don't know of its existence, we would think that atoms and electrons move on their own, and we would be surprised that light and all other matter behaves like a particle and a wave at the same time. We would think that quantum realm is weird and unexplainable. Maybe it is, but perhaps we just didn't ask the right questions.
I have no idea what lies on the other side of physical death, but that there is so much aliveness that's building in me that I can't help but think there is some connection between that and the movement toward physical death.
What if all matter, including us, is a flow of a great river that bloomed into existence as life? There is one more thing that I want to share with you. But before I do, I want to tell you that I love the Midnight Gospel because it has all these ideas, thoughts, and connections. Of course, the same insights could be found in Buddhism, other philosophies and religions. However, ideas need to be reinvented and resurrected. Midnight Gospel has a freshness that we all need and something more than that. I have shared what I found most beautiful or meaningful, but I only scratched the surface. If you would like me to expand on these ideas or cover some other topics that I didn't include, please leave a comment below. Here is one more small idea that I will leave you to explore on your own. One of the laws of thermodynamics in physics is the law of conservation of energy. It states that energy does not appear out of nowhere, nor does it disappear. Energy only transforms from one form into another.
I love you too. And Duncan, that kind of love isn't going anywhere. That's another thing you find, that I may leave this plane of existence sooner rather than later, but the love isn't going anywhere. I'm as certain of that as I am of anything.
Still not science.